Hey everybody, Jay Lavelle here, and I've been inspired by my good friend Katie Saulides to start doing some readings for you. She's been reading out of one of her books, and I'm like, well, you know what? I've got the time, you guys have the bandwidth, why not do a little bit of reading for you? So I am going to be reading for you out of my collection of short stories called A Flutter of Darkness. And I'm just going to start right at the beginning and try to read one story at a time for you all. This one is called Honey, and it is told in kind of a before and after type of way, so you'll hear today or last night or yesterday morning, that type of thing. So make sure you pay attention to that because it's an important part of the story. All right, so without me talking about it any further, let's get going on this. So this is Honey. Today, 11 a.m., huddling in the bathtub, knees pulled up to her chest, Carmen wished she would just die. She'd started the shower warm and let it gradually cool. The spray bit into her back like sand in the wind. Her teeth chattered and her body shook, trying desperately to warm itself, while Carmen fought to douse the fire within. 105 degrees, and she knew it would keep getting hotter. Her brain sizzled like a ribeye in a pressure cooker. She'd cried silently with the torture, staring straight down with her face hidden behind a curtain of black hair. The tears didn't help, but they came anyway. After 20 minutes, the water turned cold. Her muscles twitched harder, the shivers becoming shakes that racked her body. Just take it, she told herself, willing her mind to endure the cold and pain. I have to bring this fever down. Yesterday morning. The morning started just like any morning. Carmen rose from bed and stumbled into the bathroom. The toilet seat was cold on her bottom. She yawned and picked at her nails. God, that stinks, she whispered as she caught a whiff of her own morning breath. What'd you say, babe? Carmen startled so hard she fell off the toilet seat. She cracked her hip on the tile floor and scrambled back into the corner. You okay in there? Asked a hoarse male voice. A tall, brown-skinned man stepped into her small bathroom, and recollection came to her. The man grinned goofily when he saw her on the floor. What are you doing? I fell off the toilet. The man blew a raspberry between his lips. What, did I startle you or something? Carmen's face reddened, and she looked down at herself. He shook his head. Shit, sorry. Guess we had a bit to drink last night, huh? Yeah, a bit, I guess. Carmen hugged her arms around her bare chest. The man stared down at her. They were both nude, and he had Are you feeling a little excited this morning? Carmen asked. What? The man glanced down. Oh, sorry. No, it's just a morning thing. It'll go away once I pee. Want a hand up? He reached out a hand to her, but Carmen had a tough time keeping her eyes off his other long limb, also pointing at her. He pulled Carmen to her feet, and she slid out of the way so he could use the toilet. So, this is kind of embarrassing, but I forgot your name. The man laughed as he peed. Dang, and I thought it was only guys who did that. He shook his head. My name's Gustav. Carmen paid close attention to his backside while he turned away from her. He was a remarkable, well-formed man with a tight butt and muscular thighs. Gustav, really? You don't look like a Gustav. I don't, do I? Well, you look just like a Carmen. And what's that supposed to mean? Gustav flushed the toilet and stepped over to her in the doorway. His large hands closed around her bare waist and pulled her tightly against him. His body burned hot against her. Well, Gustav said, you're smoking hot, great ass, cute tits, and a terrible memory. She slapped his chest, then gazed up at him, biting her bottom lip. He squeezed against her tighter. Still just a morning thing? She asked slyly. rubbing her hips against him. No, this one's real. Damn, Gustav, you're sweating a river, Carmen said, flopping over off his hips. Sweat collected on his forehead and rolled down his cheeks. Well, you gave me one hell of a workout, woman, Gustav said, wiping an arm over his face. He grimaced a little at the moppings of perspiration. Sorry, I just sweat a lot, he said. Carmen observed him curiously. He looked no less handsome, and his muscles were no less firm, exquisite, in fact, but his cheeks drooped a little, and the color in his face looked wrong. Are you okay? I don't really care about the sweating. I'll just take a shower. I'm fine. Hey, how about we hang out again tonight? Carmen drew in a breath and looked up at the twirling ceiling fan. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know you that well, and I should be running some errands today. Don't know me? We've been screwing all morning, and we fit perfect together. Come on, you could run your errands now and still come out with me tonight. Those warm brown eyes were inviting, and truthfully, she did like him. Fine, I'll go out with you tonight, but you've got to take off so I can get my things done. Gustav smiled, and his face once again appeared healthy and vibrant. Good, he said, and rose from the bed. I'll swing by and pick you up tonight. What time? Nightfall. Nightfall? I thought you were taking me for dinner. Where are we going? Gustav pulled on his pants and smiled at her again. It's a surprise, he said, but I promise it won't disappoint. You haven't disappointed so far. Don't screw it up now. You'll love it, he said. It's something very different. Nightfall? Who the hell says nightfall? Carmen unloaded groceries from her car. What an odd guy. Girl, the situations you get yourself into. It comes back to that booze you've been drinking, her mother always said. One of these days you're going to wake up and not even know where you've been. So what? She was 23, single, and worked her ass off. If she wanted to go out on the weekends and make bad decisions, well, she'd earned it. With the last exquisitely lean meal stacked in her freezer, Carmen sat on a bar stool at her kitchen counter. With the apartment clean and empty, only the sound of her refrigerator running kept her company. She didn't feel lonely, only anxious. She didn't usually go out on Sundays. 7 a.m. came fast Monday morning, and she'd have to be behind the counter at the law office. Even a second late, and that douchebag James would be on her ass. God, she hated that man. Ever since she'd shot him down, he'd been a real prick to work for. The jerk had grabbed her boob at last year's New Year's Eve party. She should have called the cops on him right then, or at least reported him to the partners. But she needed the job, and bad things tended to happen to women when they spoke up. Carmen tapped her fingers on the worn Formica countertop. She had a routine, and this last-minute date didn't fit. She pressed her hands flat, then got up and pulled a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon from the fridge and poured herself a glass. She carried the glass as she paced the one-bedroom apartment. Finally, she scooped up a book from her coffee table. Clones, the anthology. Well, it looked cool anyway. A friend gave her the book and told her it was a must-read. Carmen sank onto her sofa with the glass of wine and the book. With a long sigh, she opened the volume to the first story. Time and wine passed quickly, and when a knock came at the door, it startled Carmen. Nightfall, she thought, looking out over her balcony window at the low-hanging moon. Jesus, you don't look well, Carmen said, shocked when she opened the door. Gustav was ashen, his skin grayer than brown, his eyes sunken into his head. It's okay, I'm fine, really. No, I don't think you are. You shouldn't be doing anything tonight but resting. Maybe go to the hospital, actually. You can take me out next weekend. No, it has to be tonight, he said sharply. I mean, I made special plans, and it'll only work tonight. Carmen watched him with raised eyebrows. An icy spider prickled through her mind, dancing over her senses, crying, "Warning, warning!" A grimace pulled at her mouth and formed the word "no." Gustav saw her concern, read her hesitation, and touched her arm. For a moment she saw warmth in his eyes, and an affection she had been craving for months of dating hollow men. "I'm fine, Carmen. I just get anemic sometimes. I need a little protein and I'll be okay." "Just stay in with me. We'll watch a movie and you can sleep off the liquor from last night," she argued. "Come on, Carmen," Gustav said and smiled at her. She remembered those soft lips on her body that morning and couldn't help but smile back. She sighed loudly. "All right, fine, but I haven't done CPR since my high school course, so if you keel over, you're a goner." Gustav chuckled. "I'll take my chances." Carmen grabbed her purse and followed Gustav out. "Nice ride, man," she said as she climbed into his convertible. Now that the weather had cooled, they wouldn't be riding with the top down, but she could picture it in the summer, long and sleek and black, a sexy exterior with plenty of muscle under the hood, just like Gustav. "Thanks, I got it this year. Only has about 5,000 miles on it." "What kind of work do you do?" she asked, thinking about her new but much less fancy Pontiac. "Real estate." "Real estate? Must be a good gig." "It can be." "Maybe I'll get into that." Gustav chuckled and started the engine. "Yeah, maybe." Today, 2 p.m. Carmen clawed at her face and body in panic. The fever burned hotter than ever, and now a terrifying new symptom emerged. A voice in her head, like a passenger in her mind, began speaking with her. A woman's voice, but deep, sultry, and she didn't want to share Carmen's body. "Let go," the voice told her. "Stop fighting and let go." "I can't. I have to beat this fever." "You can't stop the fever, Carmen. It will just burn hotter until you are consumed. Lie down, give up now, and it will be painless." "If I give up, I'll die." "No, Carmen. It's the only way you'll live. Trust me. Just give up now." "Trust you? You're in my head. Get out." The woman laughed. "I'm not just in your head, Carmen. I am everywhere." To demonstrate this, a fierce pain ripped through her abdomen that sent Carmen to the floor. She collapsed into a pile, gripping her stomach. Oh, God, it hurts. Just make it stop. Please, God, make it stop." "You can make it stop, Carmen. Just stop fighting me, and you will feel no more." "Ah!" Carmen screamed in pain. "Fuck you, bitch." The voice in her head darkened. "I can make it worse." The pain shifted downward, and an incredible pressure built in her bladder and colon, twisting and growing and pushing out in all directions. "No, no, no, stop." "I'll never stop," the voice said. Carmen voided her bladder onto the floor. She sobbed loudly. "Just go away." "I own you now," the woman said and laughed. A set of fierce cramps tightened down, and Carmen writhed in pain and humiliation. Last night. 20 minutes after Carmen got in Gustav's car, the last lights of Grand Rapids passed outside her window. The shift from urban to rural happened gradually at first, but then Gustav took a left onto a dirt road, and all semblance of modern living disappeared. Dense deciduous forests closed in on either side of the narrow road, and Carmen stifled a chill. Gustav hummed along with the radio, unbothered by the gathering night. "Are we almost there?" Carmen asked. Gustav smiled and turned on his blinker. The car slowed, though Carmen could see no road or driveway. Then a narrow passage appeared, abruptly cut into the forest, and so well hidden she would have driven by it 100 times without noticing. "We're going in there? It's just a 2-track. "It'll be fine, trust me." The convertible bumped and rocked up the path for a third of a mile before finally emerging in a clearing where a dozen other cars were parked. "Come on, we're late," Gustav said excitedly. She followed him around to the trunk where he grabbed 2 gray garments that looked a lot like the blankets passengers were given on airlines. "Here," he said, and handed one to Carmen. While she watched, Gustav pulled the white polo shirt over his head and replaced it with the gray garment, which hung down to his knees and had a hood covering his head. "I don't get it," Carmen said blankly, holding the wool cloak in her hand. "It's kind of a costume thing. We're going as druids." "Costumes? Come on, Gustav. You said this was going to be cool." Carmen shook her head, then looked around her at the blackness of the woods around. "What the hell am I doing out here?" "It's very cool. Come on, Carmen. Play along for me." Gustav gave her his most charming smile. Carmen huffed, but pulled off her top and threw it in the trunk. She'd no bra underneath, and the cool air bit at her exposed skin hungrily. She slipped the long wool garment over her head and shoulders. Surprisingly, it was warm and soft. She pulled the hood up. "Ooh," she said mockingly, "aren't we so scary?" He chuckled, then laughed, and it went on so long that his voice actually added to the chill of the night. But then he took her hand, and they walked along an unlit path through the trees. His warm, tight grip helped push back some of her fear, which was good, for even the glittering stars above seemed to watch her with malintent, and the pale yellow moon looked like something out of a horror movie. Despite the cold, sweat began to roll between her shoulder blades. "This is not okay, Carmen. Get out of here now." She would have turned right then, and damn the embarrassment, but then she smelled the fire, and it brought back pleasant memories of her childhood summers at her grandparents' house, Grandpa clearing the brush into a large burn pile, Grandma bringing out plates of marshmallows and chocolate. She glanced up at the sky again, but quickly averted her gaze. She would have to focus on the terrestrial tonight. Then they stepped into a clearing, and Carmen ground to a stop. More than a dozen cloaked figures turned toward them. Carmen couldn't see their faces, only outlines. Gustav pulled her forward. Carmen dragged her feet. "What is this?" she whispered. "Come on, they're my friends," he urged. A single hooded figure lifted their hand in greeting. Carmen resisted like a toddler in a grocery store, but Gustav pulled her along. When they reached the gathered figures, one of them took her arm. "Welcome," she said. "Don't be afraid." Carmen could see that beneath the hood, the woman had a pretty face and a kind smile. Gustav released her, and another figure immediately took her arm. The group circled the fire and held Carmen in uncertain participation. Gustav stepped up to the fire and said some words. The group began mumbling. Carmen couldn't make out the words, but they sounded lyrical and repeated, like a chant. A second figure broke from the circle and met Gustav in the middle. The group expanded to fill in the gap. The new figure held a glass jar with golden liquid inside. The cloaked figures became silent, and Gustav pulled off his hood. He looked even more ill now, only an hour after he'd picked her up. Carmen strained to hear as the group began their low chant again. "Amala, Amala, child of light, you brought the sun, you brought the night. Mistress Amala, thief of all, you gave us life, you brought the fall. Amala, queen of darkest night, join us now, give us sight." Over and over they chanted, and then Gustav began convulsing. His body wormed and jerked like a snake full of sticks, or a blown-up figure outside an income tax center. Carmen shivered. Darkness pressed in all around her. Gustav screamed, a single burst of sound into the night. The crowd silenced. Gustav slowly looked around the circle of hooded people, a sneer on his face. He looked predatory, dangerous, like a wolf watching a field of rabbits. He locked eyes with Carmen, But before he could make a move toward her, the master of ceremonies raised their glass jar and shouted, "Amala, taker of life, corrupter of souls, I draw you forth out of this man." Gustav turned on the speaker and snarled, but did not attack. The man unscrewed the lid of the jar and thrust it toward Gustav. "I draw you out, that you may live again in another." When Gustav spoke, his voice was like nothing Carmen had ever heard. It was deep and cracked with gravel and age. It was quiet, but carried over the group like thunder. "And in whom shall I live again?" Carmen yelped as she was dragged forward. "What? No! Let me the fuck go!" Carmen kicked and jerked, but remained locked in place. Gustav reached out and pushed back her hood. Then he nodded. "She will do." He held out one hand for the jar without taking his eyes off her. He took the jar in both hands and whispered into its mouth. Carmen's heart beat frantically. When Gustav raised his head and looked at Carmen again, a cool green light burned in his eyes. Then hands grabbed her face from behind. Two hands hooked into her mouth and pulled it open. Another grabbed her lower jaw so she couldn't close her mouth. She couldn't even scream. Gustav tipped the jar over her open maw, and honey poured into her. She choked, but the honey didn't stop coming. It filled her mouth, thick and sweet like death. Finally, between retches, she swallowed. The honey went down like cinnamon whiskey, tracing a path like lava into her stomach. Then the fire shot out from her belly, washing through her insides. She shook violently as delirious heat crept into her head and darkness overcame her sight. She woke on the floor of her apartment, burning with fever. Today, 7 p.m. She wasn't alone, hadn't been all day. What time is it? There was someone else in her head. Bitch, demon! And she was torturing her. She didn't feel like Carmen anymore. She was Carmen, though, but also Amala. She couldn't get her out. Leave me. Oh, God, please, please leave me. She'd no idea how long she'd been there, writhing, crying, begging for relief or death. Just fucking kill me now. As soon as she had a thought, get out of my head, it disappeared in a humid haze of pain. Her body wouldn't respond to her commands. Another insult, another betrayal. He did this to me. How could he do this to me? Her time was short. The fever was killing her, and she knew that this other thing in her head, this Amala, goddamn bitch sorceress, waited for her to, what? To give up and die miserably? Why? What the hell do you want? She begged. If you give up now, I will make it quick. Carmen languished, naked on the kitchen floor, rolling fitfully on the tile, trying to cool her body down. Perspiration soaked her dark hair and matted it all around her head. Salty white streaks stained her face from all the useless tears she'd cried. There has to be a way out of this. There has to be a cure. The answer came like a dark cloud creeping over a blue sky. A terrible answer. Pain is the only way. And she couldn't take any more pain. I will have you, and you will be gone. But your body will be mine. That's all I am? A fucking body? Is that all? You're a simple vessel. You are of no consequence. Stop fighting. Give yourself to me now. Carmen dragged herself up to the counter and palmed her phone, then dropped back down. Let me do this, you evil bitch. I'm doing it for you. Hesitation in her mind, a quieting. Then something softens, and she regained just a little bit of control. Concentrating as hard as she could, she tapped a number into her phone's keypad. Jesus shit. She couldn't believe she was calling him. He picked up on the second ring. Where the hell were you today? You no-call, no-showed? Your ass is going to be fired. James' snotty, nasally voice reflected his character perfectly. Carmen drew her senses together as much as possible. It was a little like trying to pull one's head out of the toilet before they'd finished puking. The phone banged against her head as her hands shook. She clamped her jaw tight to stop the chattering and breathed through her teeth. It seemed impossible, but more sweat pooled on her body as she struggled to focus. James, I need you. She hoped her voice came out sultry. She needed this to work. Silence. Then, what? I just can't stop thinking about you. I need you here with me right now. In her head, she was using her sex voice, but it came out more like a meth head begging her dealer for more. Are you fucking with me? His words were short, harsh, but with a subtle hint of something underneath. Hope, Amala said, as if she would understand. She was the destroyer of hope and happiness, the bringer of darkness. I understand everything. Carmen took a shaky breath. She needed him to believe her. I've been trying to fight this feeling, but I can't. I want you bad. Can you come over? The words came out breathy, and she knew he'd think it was out of need, when in reality, she could hardly catch her breath. I'm at home with my wife. Yeah, send me your address. Amala laughed with her. They are too easy, not even sporting. I'll text it to you, Carmen said. Please, hurry though. I don't want to lose this moment. The excitement and lust was clear in his voice. I'll make sure you never forget it. Carmen hung up. Sick is what it was. But what else could she do? Carmen yanked open a bottom cupboard, one she never used. She dragged out the food dehydrator, an item as useless as tears, a canister of plain rolled oats, and then, yes, right there, a small, bear-shaped bottle of honey. Though half full and mostly congealed, it would have to do. Honey, honey, honey. She pulled herself up and found a short glass and squeezed the thickened honey into it. Her hands trembled and almost knocked the glass off the counter. She held them flat to steady herself. She looked into the glass, then closed her eyes and looked into herself. Amala, I know you're listening, and I have the perfect vessel for you. Honey, sex, fire, vengeance. She hoped James liked honey. The end. All right, so that was Honey, which is the first story in my collection of short stories called A Flutter of Darkness. If you're interested in picking up the book, you can go to threefuriouspress.com. Just search for Jason Lavelle on there, or for A Flutter of Darkness, and you'll be able to pick that up. Otherwise, tune in next time when I do another one of these readings, and you'll get to hear the next story. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.